My name is Ethan Brooks, and I used to believe in marriage the way some people believe in Santa Claus, with complete faith until reality kicks you in the teeth. At 35, I've spent the last 8 years writing technical manuals for software companies, turning complex code into simple instructions that even my mother could follow. It's honest work, pays the bills, and gives me plenty of time to observe people. Observation, as it turns out, is a skill that would serve me well. Rachel, my wife of 6 years, works as a creative director at Meridian Design Agency. She's brilliant at her job, turning corporate nonsense into visually stunning campaigns that make people want to buy things they don't need. She's also brilliant at deception, though I didn't discover that particular talent until much later. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday night in October. I was in our modest downtown apartment, wrestling with a particularly tedious user manual for accounting software. When Rachel's phone buzzed on the coffee table, the screen lit up with a message from Aaron Blake. "Hey, Rach, found those old project files you mentioned. Want to grab coffee tomorrow and go through the creative concepts? Could be worth revisiting for the Henderson account." Now, any reasonable husband might think nothing of this message. Aaron was Rachel's ex-boyfriend from college, sure, but that was ancient history. They'd dated for 2 years before she met me, and their relationship had ended amicably when Aaron moved to Seattle for work. He'd returned to our city 6 months ago, and Rachel had mentioned running into him at a networking event. But here's the thing about being a technical writer. You learn to read between the lines. You develop an eye for details that don't quite fit. And Aaron Blake, from what I remembered, was a marketing consultant who specialized in startup launches. He didn't work with established accounts like Henderson Industries. Rachel emerged from the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel, and picked up her phone. I watched her face as she read the message. The slight smile that played across her lips, the way she held the phone a little closer to her chest. These weren't the reactions of someone receiving a routine business message. "Work stuff?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Just Aaron," she said, tapping out a response. "He thinks some of our old college projects might inspire the Henderson campaign." "Aaron Blake? I thought he worked with startups." Rachel's fingers paused over the screen. "He's expanding his client base. Anyway, it's just coffee." She hit send and set the phone aside, but I caught a glimpse of her message. "Sounds perfect. The usual place at 10? Can't wait to see what you've been working on." The usual place. Can't wait to see what you've been working on. I returned to my manual, but the words blurred together. My mind was processing something else entirely. The fact that my wife apparently had a usual place with her ex-boyfriend, and that she was excited about more than just old project files. Over the next few days, I paid attention. Really paid attention. Rachel started taking longer to get ready in the mornings, spending extra time on her makeup, and choosing her outfits with unusual care. She'd always been stylish, but this was different. This was the kind of attention to appearance that comes with wanting to impress someone specific. Her phone habits changed too. She'd always been casual about leaving it around, but now it stayed close to her side. When it buzzed with messages, she'd check them quickly and sometimes step into another room to respond. The coffee meeting with Aaron stretched into a 3-hour lunch. When Rachel returned to the office, Tara Gonzalez, her closest work friend, mentioned that Rachel seemed unusually energetic and distracted. Tara and I had always gotten along well. She was one of those people who thrived on office gossip and social dynamics, and she'd often share amusing stories about agency politics when she and her husband joined us for dinner. "Your wife was practically glowing today," Tara told me during one of our occasional phone conversations. "Must be excited about this Henderson project." But when I asked Rachel about the project that evening, her descriptions were vague and contradictory. She couldn't seem to decide whether Henderson wanted a complete rebrand or just a campaign refresh. For someone who usually talked about her work with passionate precision, this lack of clarity was troubling. The real confirmation came the following week. I was updating our shared calendar, something I'd always handled since Rachel claimed to be calendar challenged. When I noticed several appointments that didn't quite add up, client meetings scheduled during lunch hours, research sessions that ran late into the evening, a creative retreat planned for the upcoming weekend at the Grandview Hotel. The Grandview Hotel. I knew that name. Rachel had mentioned it exactly once in our 6 years of marriage, during one of those late-night conversations where couples share their romantic histories. It was where she'd gone with Aaron during their senior year of college, their special place for important occasions. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat in our living room that night, staring at the calendar entry, feeling something cold and heavy settle in my chest. Rachel was in the shower, humming a song I didn't recognize, something she'd probably heard during one of her extended meetings with Aaron. My laptop was open on the coffee table, displaying the Henderson Industries project folder that Rachel had shared with me months ago when she'd first landed the account. She'd been so proud of winning the contract, had wanted to show me every detail of her proposal. Now I scrolled through the files, looking for any mention of Aaron Blake or his consulting firm. There was nothing. Aaron Blake had no connection to Henderson Industries. There was no legitimate business reason for him to be involved in Rachel's project. I closed the laptop and listened to Rachel's humming echoing from the bathroom. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start paying very close attention indeed. If my wife wanted to play games, she'd find out that her husband was better at reading the rules than she'd ever imagined. The shower stopped, and Rachel's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another message from Aaron. Can't stop thinking about our conversation today. Tomorrow can't come soon enough. I memorized the message before Rachel emerged from the bathroom. She picked up her phone, read Aaron's text, and smiled that same secretive smile I'd noticed before. Good day at work? I asked. The best, she said, and for the first time in our marriage, I knew she wasn't talking about work at all. The next morning, I called in a favor from Liam Murphy, my best friend since college and the most talented IT consultant I knew. Liam had helped me set up our home network, and more importantly, he had access to tools and techniques that could help me understand exactly what Rachel was doing with her time. You sure about this, Ethan? Liam asked when I explained the situation. We were sitting in his cluttered home office, surrounded by computer monitors and the detritus of a dozen ongoing projects. Once you start down this road, there's no going back. She's lying to me, Liam. About everything. The meetings, the project, Aaron's involvement. None of it adds up. Liam nodded slowly. He'd met Rachel several times over the years and had always been polite but never particularly warm toward her. I'd always assumed it was just his natural introversion, but now I wondered if he'd seen something I'd missed. All right, he said, pulling up a program on his computer. Let's see what we can find. What we found was damning. Rachel's email account, which she'd given me access to years ago for managing our shared expenses, contained a thread of messages with Aaron that painted a very different picture than the professional collaboration she'd described. The early messages were indeed about project files and creative concepts, but as the days progressed, the tone shifted. Aaron's messages became more personal, referencing inside jokes and shared memories. Rachel's responses grew longer and more intimate. Remember that weekend at the Grandview? Aaron had written. Best creative session we ever had. We should try to recapture that magic. Rachel's reply made my stomach turn. I've been thinking about that too, more than I should. Maybe it's time we stopped pretending this is just about work. I screenshot everything, saving the evidence to a secure folder on my own computer. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed to understand the full scope of their plan, and, more importantly, I needed to make sure that when the truth came out, it would be on my terms. There's more, Liam said, scrolling through another set of files. Look at this. He'd found Rachel's cloud storage account, which contained drafts of presentations and project files. But buried among the legitimate work documents was a folder labeled AB Collaboration, Aaron Blake Collaboration. The files in that folder told a different story than the one Rachel had been telling me. There was no Henderson Industries project. Instead, Aaron and Rachel were developing a proposal to pitch directly to Henderson, cutting out Meridian Design Agency entirely. They were planning to steal Rachel's own client and start their own consulting firm. She's not just having an affair, I said, the pieces clicking into place. She's planning to leave her job, steal her biggest client, and start a business with her ex-boyfriend. And leave you holding the bag, Liam added. Look at this. He showed me a document titled Transition Plan. Rachel had been systematically documenting her work at Meridian, copying client files and contact information. She'd even been forwarding confidential emails to her personal account. But the most interesting part was a section labeled Personal Considerations. Rachel had calculated our shared debts, the value of our apartment lease, and our joint assets. She'd been planning her exit strategy down to the last detail. She's going to clean out your joint accounts and disappear, Liam said. Probably blame you for the missing client files when Meridian realizes what happened. I leaned back in my chair, processing the magnitude of Rachel's betrayal. This wasn't just an affair. It was a complete dismantling of our life together, planned with the same meticulous attention to detail that she brought to her professional work. So what are you going to do? Liam asked. I thought about that question for a long moment. The old Ethan, the trusting husband who believed in marriage and loyalty, would have confronted Rachel directly, would have demanded an explanation and tried to work things out. But the old Ethan hadn't known he was married to someone capable of this level of deception and betrayal. The new Ethan, the one looking at evidence of his wife's systematic destruction of their life together, had different ideas. "I'm going to beat them at their own game," I said finally. "But first, I need to understand their timeline." The Grandview Hotel reservation was for the following weekend. According to the email thread, Rachel and Aaron planned to finalize their business proposal during their creative retreat and approach Henderson Industries the following Monday. That gave me exactly 1 week to prepare my counterattack. I started with the Henderson Industries project files on Rachel's work computer. Since she'd shared her login credentials with me months ago, back when we trusted each other, I had full access to her professional accounts. I began making subtle changes to the project documents, introducing small inconsistencies and errors that would be obvious to anyone familiar with Henderson's actual needs and preferences. Then I created my own version of the Henderson proposal, using my technical writing skills to craft something far more professional and comprehensive than anything Aaron and Rachel were developing. I knew Henderson's business better than Aaron did. I'd been listening to Rachel talk about them for months, and I'd actually read their annual reports and press releases. But my masterstroke was the email I sent to Mrs. Kowalski, Rachel's boss at Meridian Design Agency. I didn't reveal anything about Rachel's affair or her theft of company files, not yet. Instead, I posed as a concerned husband who'd noticed Rachel working unusually long hours and wondered if everything was all right at the office. Mrs. Kowalski's response was illuminating. She'd been wondering about Rachel's recent behavior herself. Several clients had mentioned receiving calls from Rachel about project updates that didn't align with the agency's actual work. There had been questions about missing files and unusual computer activity on Rachel's workstation. "I appreciate your concern, Ethan," Mrs. Kowalski wrote. "Rachel is a valued employee, but there have been some irregularities lately. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting to discuss the situation." I suggested that any meeting should wait until after the weekend. I wanted Rachel and Aaron to follow through with their plan, to commit fully to their betrayal before I revealed what I knew. Friday evening arrived, and Rachel packed her bag for the creative retreat. She'd told me she'd be working intensively on the Henderson project and wouldn't be available for calls or texts. "It's going to be a working weekend," she said, kissing me goodbye with the same lips that had been lying to me for weeks. "But if this goes well, it could change everything for us." She was right about that, just not in the way she imagined. After Rachel left, I drove to the Grandview Hotel and booked the room directly adjacent to the suite Aaron had reserved. The hotel's walls were thin enough that I could hear conversations from the neighboring room, and I'd brought along a small digital recorder that Liam had provided. I didn't plan to spy on their intimate moments. I had no interest in torturing myself with those details, but I wanted to record their business discussions, to have proof of their plans to steal Henderson Industries and destroy my wife's current employer. What I heard that night exceeded even my worst expectations. Rachel and Aaron weren't just planning to steal one client, they were planning to systematically poach Meridian's entire roster, using Rachel's inside knowledge and client relationships to build their own agency. "Mrs. Kowalski will never see it coming," Rachel said, her voice carrying clearly through the thin wall. "By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have signed contracts with half her clients." "And what about Ethan?" Aaron asked. Rachel's laugh was cold and dismissive. "Ethan's a technical writer. He thinks marriage is about trust and communication. He'll never figure out what's really happening until it's too late to stop us." I sat in my hotel room, listening to my wife plan the destruction of her employer and the end of our marriage, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The trusting, loyal husband Rachel had married was gone, replaced by someone far more calculating and ruthless. Someone who was about to teach her that technical writers are very good at reading the fine print, and even better at writing their own endings. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that comes after a storm. Rachel returned from her creative retreat, glowing with confidence and barely contained excitement. She claimed the Henderson project was progressing beautifully and that she'd be presenting the final proposal to the client later that week. What she didn't know was that I'd spent Sunday afternoon crafting a very different kind of presentation. I'd used my access to Rachel's email account to send a message to Henderson Industries' marketing director, introducing myself as a freelance consultant who'd been collaborating with Meridian Design Agency on their account. I'd attached my own version of the proposal, one that incorporated everything I'd learned about Henderson's needs while showcasing the kind of technical precision and attention to detail that Rachel's version lacked. The response came Tuesday morning. Henderson Industries wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss my proposal. They were impressed by the thoroughness of my research and the innovative approach I'd outlined. They also mentioned that they'd been somewhat disappointed by the preliminary materials they'd received from Meridian and were considering alternative options. I scheduled the meeting for Thursday afternoon, one day before Rachel and Aaron planned to make their pitch. But before I could move forward with my own plans, I needed to neutralize the threat they posed to Meridian Design Agency. Despite everything Rachel had done, I had no intention of letting her destroy an entire company and the livelihoods of her coworkers. Wednesday morning, I called Mrs. Kowalski and requested an urgent meeting. When I arrived at her office, I brought printed copies of every email, document, and file that Rachel had stolen or forwarded to her personal accounts. Mrs. Kowalski was a woman in her 50s who'd built Meridian from a two-person startup into one of the city's most respected design agencies. She had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that came from decades of dealing with difficult clients and unreliable employees. "This is quite serious, Ethan," she said, reviewing the evidence I'd provided. "Rachel has violated multiple company policies and potentially several laws regarding intellectual property theft." "I understand," I replied, "but I'm not here to destroy her career. I'm here to protect your company and your other employees." Mrs. Kowalski studied me carefully. "What do you propose?" "Let me present the real Henderson proposal to them tomorrow. Give Meridian the chance to retain the client with work that actually meets their needs. As for Rachel..." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I think her actions will speak for themselves when she tries to pitch stolen material to a client who's already seen a superior alternative." Mrs. Kowalski agreed to my plan, but she insisted on taking immediate action regarding Rachel's access to company systems. By Wednesday afternoon, Rachel's computer passwords had been changed and her access to client files had been revoked. Rachel came home that evening frustrated and confused. "There's been some kind of system glitch at work," she told me. "It says they're updating security protocols, but the timing couldn't be worse. I need those files for the Henderson presentation." "That's frustrating," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Maybe you should talk to Mrs. Kowalski about getting priority access restored." "I tried. She's been in meetings all day and hasn't returned my calls." I made sympathetic noises while internally calculating the timeline. Rachel and Aaron's presentation was scheduled for Friday afternoon. My presentation was Thursday at 2 p.m. By the time Rachel realized what had happened, Henderson Industries would have already made their decision. Thursday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I prepared for the most important presentation of my professional life. I'd spent years writing technical manuals that nobody read with enthusiasm, but today I would be selling a vision that could reshape Henderson Industries' entire marketing approach. The Henderson Industries building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the city's business district. I arrived early, reviewed my notes one final time, and tried to calm the nervous energy that had been building in my chest since Monday. The meeting exceeded my expectations. Henderson's marketing team was impressed not just by my proposal, but by my understanding of their industry and their specific challenges. I'd done something Rachel never bothered to do. I'd researched their competitors, analyzed their market position, and developed a strategy that addressed their actual business needs rather than just creating attractive visuals. "This is exactly what we've been looking for," said Jennifer Walsh, Henderson's marketing director. "Meridian's previous materials were adequate, but this shows real strategic thinking." "We'd like to move forward immediately," added Tom Henderson, the company's CEO. "Can you have a contract ready by next week?" I assured them that Meridian Design Agency would be delighted to finalize the arrangement quickly. As I left the building, I felt a satisfaction I'd never experienced in my technical writing career. For the first time in years, I'd created something that people actually wanted, but my satisfaction was nothing compared to the anticipation I felt about Rachel's reaction when she discovered what had happened. Friday afternoon, I was working in my home office when Rachel burst through the front door, her face flushed with anger and confusion. "They canceled," she said without preamble. "Henderson Industries canceled our presentation. Their assistant said they'd already selected a vendor for their marketing campaign." "That's terrible," I said, looking up from my computer with what I hoped was an appropriately sympathetic expression. "Did they say who they went with?" "Some freelance consultant who apparently impressed them with a proposal that addressed their specific strategic needs." Rachel's voice dripped with frustration. "Aaron thinks someone leaked our approach and beat us to the pitch. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence?" Rachel stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. For the first time since this whole situation began, she looked at me with genuine suspicion. "No," she said slowly. "No evidence at all." That evening, Rachel made several phone calls to Aaron, speaking in hushed tones that I couldn't quite overhear, but I didn't need to hear the details. I could see the growing panic in her body language and the way she kept checking her email for messages that weren't coming. Saturday morning brought the final piece of information I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Kowalski called to inform me that Rachel had been terminated from Meridian Design Agency, effective immediately. The evidence of her theft of company files and client information was overwhelming, and the agency's lawyers had advised swift action to protect their remaining clients. "What about Aaron Blake?" I asked. "His consulting firm's contract with Morrison Tech was terminated yesterday," Mrs. Kowalski replied. "Apparently Morrison's CEO received some very detailed information about Mr. Blake's business practices and decided he wasn't the kind of consultant they wanted representing their company." I thanked Mrs. Kowalski and hung up, feeling a deep sense of completion. Aaron's downfall had been almost embarrassingly easy to arrange. A few phone calls to his current clients, sharing some carefully selected details about his plan to steal proprietary information from Meridian, and his reputation in the industry was effectively destroyed. Rachel emerged from the bedroom around noon, her eyes red and her hair disheveled. She'd clearly been crying, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the old sympathy I used to feel for her troubles. Then I remembered the recording from the hotel, her dismissive laughter when Aaron asked about me, her certainty that I'd never figure out what was really happening. "Bad news?" I asked. "I've been fired," she said, collapsing onto the couch. "Mrs. Kowalski claims I stole company files and violated my employment contract." "Did you?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Rachel looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of fear, anger, and dawning realization. "What do you know, Ethan?" "I know everything," I said simply. "The affair with Aaron, the plan to steal Henderson Industries and half of Meridian's other clients, the systematic theft of company files, your exit strategy that involved cleaning out our joint accounts and leaving me to deal with the aftermath." Rachel's face went pale. "You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself, and Meridian, and Henderson Industries, and everyone else you were planning to hurt with your little scheme." "You destroyed my career," she whispered. "No, Rachel, you destroyed your career. I just made sure you didn't destroy anyone else's in the process." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and what her options were. It was the same analytical expression she wore when working on a particularly challenging design problem. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now you figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life," I said. "Because it's not going to involve me, and it's not going to involve Aaron, and it's definitely not going to involve stealing other people's work." Rachel stood up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. "This isn't over, Ethan." "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just haven't realized it yet." She walked to the bedroom and began packing her clothes into a suitcase. I returned to my laptop and continued working on a technical manual about database management software, listening to the sounds of my marriage ending one folded shirt at a time. 3 weeks passed in relative quiet. Rachel had moved in with her mother across town, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind the life we'd built together. Aaron Blake had apparently left the city entirely after his consulting business collapsed. Tara heard through the professional grapevine that he'd moved back to Seattle with his tail between his legs. I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. The Henderson Industries contract had been a tremendous success, leading to 3 additional freelance opportunities and the beginning of what looked like a promising consulting career. Mrs. Kowalski had even offered me a permanent position at Meridian, though I'd decided to pursue independent work for now. I was feeling optimistic about the future for the first time in months when Rachel's mother called on a Tuesday evening in November. "Ethan, dear, I think you should know that Rachel's been having a very difficult time," Margaret Brooks said in her carefully modulated voice. Margaret had always been polite to me, but I'd never been under any illusions about her true feelings. In her mind, I'd never been quite good enough for her daughter. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, meaning it despite everything that had happened. "She's been seeing a therapist, trying to understand how things went so wrong. She realizes now that she made some terrible mistakes." "That's good, Margaret. I hope therapy helps her. She'd like to talk to you, to apologize properly and discuss the possibility of working things out." I was quiet for a long moment, processing this unexpected development. "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Ethan. She's learned from her mistakes. She wants to make things right." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Rachel for coffee the following Saturday. Neutral ground, public place, no expectations beyond a civil conversation. The coffee shop was one we'd frequented during our early dating years, a small place with mismatched furniture and local artwork covering the walls. Rachel was already there when I arrived, looking thinner than I remembered and wearing the kind of carefully casual outfit that suggested she'd spent considerable time choosing what to wear. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I sat down across from her. "Your mother was very persuasive." Rachel smiled ruefully. "She's been worried about me. I haven't exactly been handling things well since everything fell apart." "I heard about the therapy. That's good. It's helped me understand some things about myself. About us." She leaned forward slightly, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. I know I hurt you, Ethan. I know I betrayed your trust in ways that might be unforgivable. Might be. I'm hoping they're not. I'm hoping we can find a way to rebuild what we had. I studied her face, looking for signs of the deception that had become so familiar over the past months. But Rachel seemed genuinely remorseful, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and her voice carrying a vulnerability I hadn't heard in years. What about Aaron? I asked. Aaron was a mistake, a symptom of problems in our marriage that I didn't know how to address directly. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I felt like we'd become roommates instead of partners, like you were more interested in your technical manuals than in me. So you decided to have an affair and steal company files? I made terrible choices. I know that now. But the feelings that led to those choices were real, Ethan. We'd grown apart, and instead of talking to you about it, I looked for connection somewhere else. I sipped my coffee, considering her words. There was some truth in what she said. We had grown apart over the past year, settling into routines that left little room for spontaneity or deep conversation. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Couples therapy, a fresh start. Maybe we could even move to a new city, leave all this behind and begin again. With what money? You're unemployed, and I'm just starting my consulting business. I've been offered a position with a design firm in Portland. It's a step down from what I had at Meridian, but it's a good opportunity. You could freelance from anywhere. I was quiet for several minutes, processing this unexpected turn. Part of me, the part that remembered why I'd fallen in love with Rachel in the first place, was tempted by the possibility of redemption and renewal. But another part of me, the part that had listened to her laugh about my naivety in that hotel room, remained deeply skeptical. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Of course. I know I'm asking a lot. Rachel reached across the table and briefly touched my hand. I just want you to know that I understand what I lost when I lost you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. We parted amicably, with an agreement to talk again in a few days. I drove home feeling confused and emotionally drained, unsure whether Rachel's apparent transformation was genuine or simply another layer of manipulation. The answer came sooner than I expected. That evening, Liam called with disturbing news. I've been monitoring some online activity, just keeping an eye on things, he said. Aaron Blake didn't move back to Seattle. He's been in Portland for the past 2 weeks, and he's been in regular contact with Rachel. What kind of contact? Email, phone calls, text messages. They're being more careful about what they put in writing, but the pattern is clear. This whole reconciliation thing is another setup. I felt that familiar cold weight settle in my chest. What are they planning? Best I can tell, they want you to move to Portland so they can continue their relationship while using your consulting income to fund their new business venture. Rachel's job offer is real, but it's with a company that Aaron has connections to. They're planning to use your technical skills and her design experience to steal clients from both Meridian and Aaron's former employers. They want me to bankroll my own betrayal. Essentially, yes. And when they've gotten what they need from you, they'll disappear together and leave you stranded in a city where you have no connections or support system. I thanked Liam and hung up, staring out the window at the city lights blinking in the darkness. Rachel's performance at the coffee shop had been flawless, the right mixture of remorse, vulnerability, and hope. If I hadn't learned to look beneath the surface, I might have fallen for it completely, but I had learned. And now it was time to teach Rachel and Aaron a final lesson about the consequences of underestimating people. I spent the next 2 days crafting my response. When Rachel called on Monday evening to ask about my decision, I was ready. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her. About growing apart, about needing a fresh start. And? You're right, we do need to start over, but not the way you're imagining. There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, I know about Aaron being in Portland. I know about your real plan. I know this whole reconciliation is just another con game. The silence stretched between us, and when Rachel finally spoke, her voice had lost all trace of the vulnerability she'd displayed at the coffee shop. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything. I just need to make sure you and Aaron understand that your games are over. What are you going to do? I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve, I said, and hung up. The next morning, I began making phone calls. The design firm in Portland that had offered Rachel a position received a detailed email about her history of intellectual property theft and client poaching. Aaron's new business contacts received similar information about his professional conduct and reliability. But my masterpiece was the comprehensive report I compiled about their entire scheme, from the original affair through the Henderson Industries theft to their current plan to defraud me and steal clients from multiple companies. I sent copies to every design agency and marketing firm in both our city and Portland, along with a professional network of consultants and freelancers who might encounter them in the future. Within a week, Rachel's job offer had been rescinded. Aaron's Portland business prospects had evaporated, and their reputations in the industry were effectively destroyed. Rachel called me one final time, her voice shaking with rage and desperation. "You've destroyed everything," she said. "How could you be so vindictive?" "I learned from the best," I replied. "The only difference is that when I destroy someone's life, they actually deserve it. This isn't over." "Yes, Rachel, it is. You just haven't figured out how to accept that yet." I changed my phone number the next day and instructed my lawyer to handle any future communication from Rachel or Aaron. 3 months later, I heard through Tara that Rachel had moved back in with her mother and was working at a small print shop, designing flyers and business cards for local businesses. Aaron had apparently found work as a sales associate at an electronics store. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but I felt no regret either. They had chosen to build their future on deception and betrayal, and they had learned that such foundations are ultimately unstable. As for me, my consulting business continued to grow. The Henderson Industries' success had led to a steady stream of clients who valued technical precision and ethical business practices. I'd found work that challenged me intellectually while allowing me to build something meaningful and honest. I never remarried, but I dated occasionally and maintained friendships with people like Liam and Tara, who had supported me through the worst period of my life. I learned to trust again, carefully and selectively, but I never forgot the lessons that Rachel and Aaron had taught me about the importance of paying attention to details and reading between the lines. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about the man I'd been before all this started. Trusting, optimistic, perhaps naive. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating, but also more self-reliant and clear-eyed about human nature. I couldn't decide whether that transformation was a loss or a gain, but I knew it was permanent, and I knew it had been necessary. In a world where people like Rachel and Aaron existed, survival required a certain ruthlessness and a willingness to fight back when attacked. I had learned to fight back, and I had won. The victory was bitter, but it was complete, and it was mine.